So we're now going to do fermented cucumbers, aka fermented dills, right? So we're essentially making a pickle in a traditional way, but nowadays it's sort of talked about as non-traditional because we're used to canned pickles. The advantages, of course, to eating fermented dills are the health benefits, of course, the flavor and the texture. There's no actual cooking involved, so we get a really crisp pickle as an end product. This is a bit of a different method in terms of smashing. There's no smashing vegetables involved. It's pretty simple. We're going to just take our jar, put our cucumbers in, and any other sort of flavorings we want. So when we're making this recipe, you can, of course, follow the strict guidelines, but you can also, as a variation, add garlic, which we're going to do today, pickling spices, which we're going to add today, and very simply add a hot chili if you want spicy pickles. But you can also add chili powder if you don't have a fresh chili, or dried chilies works just fine as well. So before we get started, we're going to review an important thing about the cucumber. It's of course important to have fresh cucumbers, but when we are talking about what makes a crisp pickle, we want to remove what's called the blossom end on the cucumber. It's shown really well here because part of it is still on. So we have here the stem end. You can clearly see the stem. And then you can see here the blossom end on this end of the cucumber. It's got a little mini blossom on it. So we want to remove the blossom end, which is this end. So on this pickle, where you can't see it so visibly, we have here the blossom end. It kind of has like a dried up circled dot on the end. And the stem end is more of like a hollowed out circle. Now, if this is confusing to you, just very simply remove both ends, okay? So don't get too caught up on which end is which. If you're not sure, just remove both. So I'll show you today by removing both. So we're going to just take a slight thin piece off of both ends, right? Now, just to show you one more time, the blossom end is here. So technically, you would only have to take off a 1/16 of an inch of the blossom end. Now, in this case, because the stem is on there and there's some leaf hanging on it, I would take that off anyways. But it isn't necessary for you to take the stem end off. So you want to take the blossom end off. If you're unsure, take both ends off. These cukes have been washed and lightly scrubbed. That's really important. We don't want any dirt visible. And here's another good example of the blossom end versus the stem end. Okay, so take at least the blossom end off, and that's essentially the first step. So we've got our trimmed, washed cukes. And again, for the purposes of variations, you can follow the recipe as I said, or you can add some additional ingredients, which in our case, I really like garlic. So we're just going to add a clove of garlic to the jar. This is beautiful garlic that we grew, so it's very fresh. So the skin doesn't come off super easily, and we don't really want to smash it like we showed you when we minced garlic. We just want to peel it. So sometimes the fresher the garlic, the peel doesn't come off quite as easily. It hasn't been curing for a very long time. So we're simply just going to take the fresh garlic, put it in there, put our funnel on. We're going to add a bit of pickling spice, which again is optional, but it does give some nice flavor. It's got peppercorns, juniper berries, mustard seeds, crushed bay leaf. So just as much or as little as you want. Now don't go too crazy or they'll be way too powerful in flavor. Dill flower season's pretty much over in Ontario, so we have some beautiful freeze-dried dill here. You can also use dehydrated dill or fresh dill from the grocery store, just like the sprigs of dill. Or you could use dill seed, which we also have here, but I think we'll have enough dill flavor with that beautiful freeze-dried dill. And after we kind of get whatever we're going to put in the jar in terms of flavorings or aromatics or herbs, we are going to just simply put the cukes in the jar. Now, I've on purpose chose the regular mouth jar to show you that it can be a little challenging. Wide mouth works better, but we are going to essentially put the jar horizontal and just start pushing our cucumbers in side by side. When we're fermenting anything, we want to get as much as we can into the jar because then we'll have more delicious, flavorful fermented foods. So we don't want to leave too many gaps. So we're just essentially putting this down, letting the weight of the cucumbers hold themselves until we can get that first layer complete. And you can see that it's hard to move around with your hand in the jar, so that's why a wide mouth would work better. But don't fear, if you only have regular mouth, you'll have to kind of just make do and get them in there as best you can. It does work, it just takes a little extra time. We're almost to the point where we've got one solid layer. Get one more in there. And so we've got a pretty good layer right here, and so we can build our second layer a little easier now. So it does help to take a minute and just try to push them down. Now if we're going to add more garlic, which I'm not going to because I just like a little garlicky flavor, or more dill, this would be a good time to add another layer of that. Okay, so we are going to just kind of keep, and if you find it helpful, go horizontal again until you can kind of start building that next row. Now, with bigger cucumbers on this second layer, we don't want to come up into the thread area at the top because we're going to not have enough head space. So sometimes, and these are all fairly good size, one thing that's helpful is you might just have to trim them down a little bit. So use the one that you're going to put on your second layer to see if there's enough room for you to get your weight in there, and you can see that there's going to be plenty of room. So we'll use that as a sort of guide to how much to cut off the remaining cukes. This also helps with beans as well, so that you don't, or asparagus, just to kind of get them all the same size. Now, if you're doing a bunch of these, you can keep these trimmed off pieces and just put them in a jar and ferment them like this as well. So we're going to keep working our cukes into the jar. You kind of want to compress them down as you go, because they can't be sticking up too much. And so we got a big gap here, and we're going to try to see if we can get another one in there. Yeah, it's not going to go. So you want to try to get as much as you can under the neck of the jar. And that's pretty good. It's definitely not my best jar, but it's pretty good. So if you had some skinnier ones like this one, you can kind of sneak one in there. You can cut them in half lengthwise and just kind of get a couple more in there just by pushing them in like that. See if we can get one more down there by compressing it. That's pretty good. Okay. So you might find that, and you can see even with me, that we definitely had a little bit of extra cucumber. This is all varies depending on the size, because you're going to have air gaps here. So as you practice this, you'll get more into the jar. You may just want to say to yourself, I'm going to make a secondary jar, because you definitely will have enough brine to do that. So it's completely up to you. Also, if you add garlic and peppers, it'll take up a little bit more space. So now we're going to just make the brine, which is different than the sauerkraut, right? So that with the sauerkraut, we really kind of smashed it and made the brine. In this case, we're going to just make the brine in a bowl. So put that one aside. We have 4 cups of spring water, tap water. Tap water is not the best because it has chlorine, and microbes don't like chlorine. It kills them. So tap water, RO water, spring water works great for this. We are going to add 1/8 of a cup of vinegar. Okay, the vinegar just is not necessary, but it really just acidifies your brine quicker, right? So when we are fermenting stuff, we're trying to create an acidic environment, and the lactic acid bacteria create that acidity. So when we add a little vinegar to the mix, it just acidifies quicker, and the microbes kind of do their thing faster. So this is one method of that really aids in the acidification of your ferment. So we are going to do 1.5 tablespoons of salt, which is a little higher than the previous ferments, because With cukes, we like to go anywhere from 2% salt to 3%, which we'll talk about, and you have that in your pro tips section. So we have a touch more salt in the fermented cukes recipe. So we're going to simply just take our 4 cups of water, our 1/8 of a cup of vinegar, and our 1.5 tablespoons of salt, and just whisk it together. And we want to give it a whisk until we see most of the salt has dissolved. And we're going to take our jar and our canning funnel, and we're just going to pour our brine in there very simply. You want to go slow so you don't overflow it. Okay, and we're going to leave a little extra room because remember, we have to apply a weight of some kind. Now with cucumbers, it's challenging. If you don't have a weight, you would have to try to use a cucumber kind of like we use that cabbage core to wedge it down, but it can be pretty difficult. So because they're hard and there's not a lot of movement. So we are going to use a fermenting top on here and a weight, just like we did in the other videos, to compress those cukes under the brine. Okay, so now we're going to set our fermentation weight on top of the cukes by applying pressure down. And we can see there's not much room to move here, so we're going to have to actually take some cucumber out to make sure that we can get it down there. And by my take, I'm going to need to add a touch more brine, not a lot, because again, the weight itself will displace everything in there and take up some space. So we're going to compress it down a little bit. If it doesn't sort of stay snug, that's fine, as long as we don't have any floaties on the top. And you can see here that immediately when we put the place down, we had the weight down, we had some floaties come up. So we've got a piece of bay leaf here, which we're going to take out. But essentially that's it. We've got our weight on top. It's not compressing those cukes down too much, like it's not stuck or snug, like super snug in there, but it has enough weight that it's keeping the brine up, and we've got about 1 inch of space here, and that's totally acceptable. So we want to see no cucumbers above the brine. We want to have the weight applying the pressure that it naturally applies to the top, which holds the brine, the cukes under the brine, and we want to see brine kind of above the weight. We're not seeing any vegetable floaties here. So we're essentially done here. This is ready for fermentation. Remember, we're always going to give the inside of the jar a wipe, which we'll do now. A little piece of dill hanging out there, which we want that off. And we're good to go. So we're going to apply the pickle pipe, which is the Mason Top brand fermenting top. We are going to turn this on like that, not super tight. Remember, we want some gas to escape. And yeah, we're good to go. This is going to go into a cool, dark place. Pickles can take a little longer than sauerkraut, so anywhere from 11, 12 to 3 weeks to a month. Remember, don't be afraid to try it. You'll notice we've got some done fermented pickles here, and when we shake the jar, you can see the brine is kind of cloudy. This one's confusing because it's got hot pepper powder in it, so it's red. That's why it's red. But it's cloudy. This one, when you shake it up, the brine itself doesn't look clear. It's a bit cloudy, so sometimes you'll see it white and cloudy, which is perfect. But this particular brine will go from clear to very milky and cloudy, and that's normal. So just like any other ferment, we want to really keep an eye on it for the first 4 days. We're going to open it up, take it from our fermentation area, have an inspection, make sure that there's no floaties on the top. If there's any scum, like white foamy stuff, like air bubbles, we want to scoop that off. But other than that, we're going to check it, make sure that the weight's down, vegetables are under the brine, and we're going to just attach this back to the top and put it back into our fermentation area.